Best afternoon, BS Ed 4. Today, we will be discussing assessment of learning. So, I am Sheila Marie Garcia with my co-rapporteurs, Cyhrelle Diator and Lhiezel Estabillo. And now, let's define what is assessment. So, we have here the four definitions of assessment. So, first, assessment that is accompanied by a number or letter grade, or which is they called summative. So summative assessments are typically conducted at the end of a learning unit or course to evaluate students' overall achievements and to compare their performance against established standards or criteria. So in this type of assessment, students are typically assigned a number or letter grade that represent their level of achievement. These grades serve as a way to communicate the results to both the students and their parents or guardians. And summative assessments are often used to make judgment about students' mastery of content or skills and to determine the readiness to progress to the next level or unit of instructions. And that is for the assessment by a number or letter grade. So next, let's move on to the compares one student's achievement with standards. Why do we compare one student's achievement with standards? So, comparing achievement with standards. So, summative assessment allow educators to compare a student's performance against predetermined standards or learning outcomes. Because these standards can be set by educational institutions, curriculum frameworks, or national guidelines. By assessing students' achievement, educators can determine whether they have met the expected benchmarks for the learning unit. And for the third one, results can be communicated to the students and parents. Yes, communication is the key, right? So, communications of results. Summative assessments results can be effectively communicated to both the students and their parents or guardians. Grades or scores obtained through summative assessment provide a summary of the student's overall performance in the learning unit. This information helps students and their families understand the level of mastery achieved, identify areas of strengths and weaknesses, and make informed decisions regarding further learning or support. So, and for the next one, occurs at the end of learning unit. So, at the end of unit evaluations, of course, we will having an summative quiz or assessment. And this is typically conducted at the end of a learning unit for the student's overall understanding and competence in the subject matter covered during that period. It helps to evaluate the effectiveness of the instructional methods, curriculum, and teaching strategies employed throughout the unit. The results of summative assessment can guide future instructional planning and curriculum development to enhance students' learning outcomes. And that is for the assessment or what is we call the summative assessment. Next, for the next slide, the process of communicating information about students' achievement and progress gained from the assessment process is typically referred to as assessment of learning. So actually, the term assessment of learning refers to the evaluations of student knowledge, skills, and understanding at the end of a learning period to determine their level of achievement. As what I said a while ago, it is the summative quiz or the summative test for assessment. So from this, it focuses on measuring what students have learned and achieved throughout a particular course or academic period. The results of assessments of learning are typically communicated to students, parents, and other stakeholders to provide informations about the students' overall performance and progress. And that is for our assessment of learning. So now let's move on to the next slides, which is the guiding principles in the assessments of learning. that will be tackled by the next reporter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cyhrelle Diator, and I'll be discussing the guiding principles in the assessment of learning. The first one is the assessment of learning is an integral part of the teaching learning process. Assessment of learning is also known as a summative test. It is a process that measures a student's achievement and understanding at the end of the unit, course, or defined time period. It is often used to evaluate students against standards, outcomes, or ranks, and to report on their progress. It can also provide feedback to inform teaching and learning. Assessment of learning is guided by state and federal standards and aligned to school curriculum. We teach with a certain objective to attain. If we have taught, then it is logical that we find out how well we have attained our lesson objective. Thus, we engage ourselves in the process of assessment. The second one is the assessment tool matched with the performance objective. Which assessment tool to use? Which test to formulate must be based on our performance objectives. If our assessment tool is aligned with our performance objective, we can claim our assessment tool to be valid. In the concrete, this means that if we want to teach our students how to dance cha-cha, and if we want to find at the end of the lesson if they are now able to dance cha-cha, we simply play the music and see them dance it. Our performance test is aligned with our performance objective, therefore it is valid. If, however, we make use of a written task and ask our students to write down the steps of cha-cha from the first to the last step to measure their ability to dance as it is explicitly stated in our performance objective, our evaluation tool is far from being valid. To write down the steps of cha-cha in order is one thing, to dance it is another thing. The third one is the results of assessment must be fed back to the learners. If the main purpose of assessment is to find out how well the learner has attained a particular learning objective, it goes without saying that the objective and assessment process serves its purpose only when we return corrected quizzes, tests, sit works and assignments, and evaluated projects as soon as possible. How else will our students know whether they are progressing towards the benchmark set at the beginning of the class by our performance objective? How pathetic is the plight of students who are subjected to quizzes, tests, assignments, and sit works who never get to know at the end and how well they have performed in such assessment activities. The fourth one is assessing learning. Teachers must consider learners' learning styles and multiple intelligences and so must come up with a variety of ways of assessing learning. It is unfortunate that, except for some performance tests conducted in physical education and science laboratory classes, most tests are written. With our written tests, our language smart students are always at an advantage. However, that would be at the disadvantage of kinesthetically intelligent and musically intelligent and spatially intelligent by Howard Gardner's in MI Theory and Silver's and Hanson's learning styles are discussed in Unit 1, Chapter L. These learning styles and multiple intelligences are considered in our assessment activities if they are integrated in our assessment activities themselves. We may not be able to integrate all learning styles and multiple intelligences in one learning activities, but we can do is to strive to take into consideration as many learning styles and multiple intelligence as possible. The traditional assessment practice of giving written tests is quite inadequate. We need to introduce other techniques like portfolio assessment and other authentic tools. The fifth one is to contribute to the building of the cultures of success in the school. It is pedagogically sound that in our assessment techniques, we give some positive feedback along with not so good ones. To contribute to the building of the culture of the success in the school, we must comment like nicely put, well done, fine idea, good point on students' papers to boost their ego and confidence, for them to level up more, starting our critical evaluation of performance or school project project by accentuating on positive points and giving them in the form of suggestions those not so good points that definitely need improvement will cushion the impact of our critical evaluation. When we critically evaluate in this manner, we make the student feel that we are not subjecting his presentation or criticizing it with their projects with a critical evaluation when in fact we have already done so without his or her knowledge or knowing it.
I am Lhiezel Estabillo, and I will be discussing the other five guiding principles in the assessment of learning. So, number six, emphasize on self assessment. In assessment of learning, teachers use evidence of student learning to make judgment on student achievement against goals and standards. So, one example of this is a summative assessment. So, in this, emphasize on self-assessment. Student check if he or she has achieved the learning objectives or if there is an improvement within himself or herself. Teachers must create an assessment that emphasizes on self-assessment so that learners will be motivated to achieve more and to gain more learning. Next is, if we believe that our task as teachers is to teach all pupils or students, even those from limited backgrounds, will have access to opportunities and therefore can achieve, then the bell curve mentality must be abandoned. It says here that if we, as future teachers, believe that all pupils deserve to learn, then pupils will or can achieve everything. Through the teacher's dedication to impart knowledge to every learners, pupils themselves will be motivated to go outside their comfort zone. Thus, will get more opportunities in life. Number eight, assessment of learning should never be used as punishment or as a discipline measure. Instead, assessment of learning must motivate the learners to do more, to give their best, and to have improvement in their studies. Moreover, the teacher's role is essential in making this possible, and that is through being very careful with their feedbacks. They must use constructive criticism. Also, assessment of learning must be used to measure students' level of knowledge or to measure what they have learned from you as their teacher. And that will not only help your learner but also you as their knowledge provider. We have here number 9. Result of learning assessment must be communicated regularly and clearly to parents so that they can monitor their children's progress in school, and also for you as a teacher to know the situations of your students at home. And this knowing their situations will help teachers or will help you to make adjustments and improvements with your teaching strategies. And lastly, number 10, emphasize on real-world application that favors realistic performance over out of context drill items. Since assessment of learning focuses after the instruction, real-life situations will be a good choice. Now, as an application for all the lessons that the teacher has taught. For example, is a math interview. So those are the guiding principles in the assessment of learning.
Okay, now let's focus on the assessment in the different phases of instruction. So assessment plays a crucial role in the different phases of instructions. And these are the prior to instruction, during instruction, and after instruction. Let's explore each phase and how assessment is typically utilized. First, let's discuss prior to instruction. But before instructions begins, assessments are conducted to gather information about students' existing knowledge skills, and readiness. This assessment helps educators understand students' strengths, weaknesses, and learning needs. Common assessment methods used in this phase include pre-assessment and diagnostic assessment. And now let's move on to the during instruction. So during instructions provides ongoing feedback to guide teaching and learning process. It helps educators monitor students' progress, identify areas of difficulty, and make instructional adjustment as necessary. And here are some common assessment strategies used during instruction. First is the formative assessment. These assessments are conducted during instruction to gather feedback on students' understanding and progress. And next one is the classroom observations. Teachers observe students' behaviors, engagements, and participations during instruction. And for the last one is the questioning and discussions. Teachers use questions and discussion to probe students' understanding and encourage critical thinking. So that is for the during instructions. Now let's move on to the last instructions, which is the after instruction. So assessment after instruction is conducted to evaluate students' learning outcomes and measures their achievement of instructional goals. It helps determine the effectiveness of instruction and informs future instructional decisions. So we have here the common assessment methods used after instructions include summative assessment. These assessments are administered at the end of a unit, course, or instructional period to evaluate students' overall learning and achievement. So next one is the rubrics and scoring guides. These tools provide a structured framework for assessing and grading students' work, and they help ensure consistency and objectivity in evaluating students' performance. And for the last one, which is the feedback and self-assessment, which teachers provide feedback to students on their performance, highlighting areas of strengths and areas for improvement. So overall, assessments conducted before, during, and after instruction help inform instructional decisions, personalize learning experiences, and measures students' growth and achievement. They provide valuable insight into students' progress and guide the instructional process to maximize learning outcomes. And I hope you have gained knowledge about assessment in the different phases of instructions. Now let's move on to the next slide, which is the appropriate assessment tools teacher makes. So here are the examples: test paper pencil, authentic test, performance test, portfolio assessment. And that's all. Thank you for listening.